Hi, everyone. Welcome again to our podcast. It's been a while. I know we've had a lot of things going on for us, but we will try as much as possible to be consistent this year. At least that's the plan. And we're hoping that everything would align for us and it will be possible for us to do this more often, consistently, and give you inspiring topics and thought provoking topics that would help to raise the consciousness of the African youths and everyone that is interested or that has this heart for awakening of Africa so that we can begin to make positive changes instead of just complaining, because I noticed that we do a lot of complaining and pointing fingers. It's very easy to do that when you are not at the forefront, when you're not in on the field, right? But when you're outside, you can always say, oh, this is this and this is that. But when you're on the field, then you might not know what to do. So we're hoping that with these conversations that we're having here, it would also strike up conversations in your personal lives, and to help you to think of ways to revolutionize ourselves, because I believe it starts from the individual. Change begins with you first before it now reflects back into the world. I don't like, what do you think?
So peace be with you guys. I think that in order to really display some new new version of yourself, like to display betterment, improvement, you really have to do that improvement within yourself. And it's almost like I think it's from Jordan Peterson. He said, like, before you talk about the world, you have to make out your own bed. So you have to do the groundwork within yourself first before you expect that groundwork to be done outside, and the field. So what is the groundwork that that must be done, like on an individual scale? For me, it's about working on your thoughts, your emotions, and working on discovering what are your strengths and your weaknesses. So that's what I can say for now.
You have really, but I think I wouldn't do it justice if I don't. I know, Judy, you forgot without mentioning the one person in our midst. He's a renowned scholar. In fact, call him a professor emeritus.
Okay. I cannot forget. I was just introducing myself after a long time.
Okay, because they'll be wondering. Okay, today they are here today, but they have somebody. I think over to you.
To the introductions.
Thank you guys for inviting me here. I'm very honored to be part of this conversation, I would say. I don't know if I have much to say, and I don't want to start reacting to what Judith has said or you have said. I think we'll integrate it later in the conversation. But I think, so just a small comment, which I think is very important. Judith, you mentioned about individual and individual, ways of, advancing you as an individual and your contribution. And I think it's also very important to remember that, and this we're talking about Africa, and in Africa, as individual, you are significant, but you are not more than the society. So I think that's also we should keep in mind as long as we try to advance ourselves as individual, but also we are part of a society. Be a street, be a football team, being a reading club, being a music band, being a acrobat group, we are also part. And us as individual, we can exist as individual, but we know in our society we exist as also as a society, so as individual. So I think we should. I know the conversation will go there in this level as an individual. What is that you should think about yourself, but also I think it's important to think, how am I part of a society? Yeah, so my name is Dr. Samwel Ntapanta. Uh, uh, I work at the University of Beirut, but also I do research in East Africa, in anthropology. Uh, Basically, I look into East African urbanism in relation to issues of waste management, but also issues of technologies. And soon I will start working, looking on informal economy and cryptocurrency in Nairobi. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, thank you for being here, and we hope that we would do something with this, because he's not going to be here for long, and it's an honor to have him here to contribute to our topic today. And my co-host and I, we were having this conversation, and we decided that the topic should be on. We've been having conversations always about Africa and the state of things in Africa. And we decided that the topic should be addressing progress in Africa and from an African perspective, because when we talk about progress, many people relate it with development or underdevelopment or stuff like that. When we weigh it from the lens, it depends on the lens you're using to analyze things, right? So we decided that the word progress is better for us, because that way you can be able to you can be able to weigh your progression or your evolution, as opposed to saying development or underdevelopment. So we decided that, from an African perspective, why are we not progressing as for us as Africans? Why are we not progressing, and what active measures, can we as the youths begin to take to ensure that we don't remain in a stagnant loop of not progressing? Because, like I earlier said, it's easy to point fingers when you're not on the field and say, oh, this person is not playing well. Like, just do, like, if you're a football fan, I know you guys watch football, and then you say, look at that, Messi is not doing this dribble and all of that, but you are not there, you're not playing. So when you are playing, you're not in their shoes. You don't know what it feels like. You don't know the training, what it is that they are doing, or what they have done to get to that position. So if you were to be in that position on the field, right? What would you do? How would you do it differently? What are your suggestions towards progression and making changes and ensuring that we don't remain in a stagnant loop? Your favorite footballers, you have seen their progressions along the years. You've seen maybe when Messi or Ronaldo started playing football, you know that this person is, you can see advancement in their careers, you can see progressions. Let's now use that same lens to view Africa as a whole, and begin to ask ourselves these questions, because this is the only way. I feel like this is the fundamental way we can be honest with ourselves and begin to take active steps towards making changes, the changes that we want to see in our lifetimes. So over to you, Kiswantida.
So it's very interesting that you mentioned like the example of football, because nowadays, like at the moment we're recording, where like there's
in Africa.
there's the African Cup going on. So it's a well thought example, and you see a lot of comments online, a lot of social media posts of very excited fans that they criticize the performance of the players of their team as if it's it's easy to do, like apply directly like an idea. You just have to go at the left, go at the right and score.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, But for example, when you look at football, it's a sport that requires a lot of lungs, a lot of stamina. You're running nonstop for 90 minutes. And now to go back to the main topic of today, Africa, why people, a lot of people are very quick to judge, to criticize, but they're not also taking the time to also be in the field and do something. And that for me it has to really do with the state of mind of the person, like the consciousness of the person. Because for example, if I look at my country, Burkina Faso, when it comes to the youth, like in Ouagadougou, for example, a lot of the youngsters, they want a office job, because for them, having an office job guarantees a nice salary, which will allow them to survive and take care of their families themselves. But for example, if they are doing, for example, let's say, human, I forgot the name in English. In French is gestion de ressources humaines, so the management of human resources, right? They're doing that field at the university. And then after graduating, right, bachelor, master, they do not have a job because the job market is already saturated. Like a lot of people will just sit down and just cross their arms, being like, oh,
And believe everything is okay.
yeah, like, no, like they will sit down and cross their arms, a lot of them, because they'll be like, I mean, it's already saturated, so why? Why even bother?
From Nigeria, some would even say it's from the village, like village people. Yeah, the village people are against you, and then they are attacking you from the village. That's from a Nigerian perspective.
And
So
that's the reason why you're not progressing, right? Okay.
yeah, that's from a personal level when you're measuring progress, right?
Okay, in this way. Okay.
So let me give it to our
Yeah.
professor here to.
No, thanks. First, I want to also return to the Afcon. It's a surprising tournament. We see the big guys being quiet, pulled back. We see the exit of Ghana. We also saw Egypt escaped a narrow hole, and so I think it's a in relation to the topic, and I'll come to that. I think I see progress when we look at this Afcon, because we are used to see Cameroon and Ghana and Nigeria. And Egypt and Tunisia and Morocco being the big guys knocking everybody out, but this time they are really suffering. We see teams like Cape Verde coming in and become top of the group with the Ghana and Egypt. And this really to me coming back to the topic, and actually it's a question I'm posing for us to start with. What is that progress, and where are we progressing to? So I think this is like fundamental question to start asking ourselves when we because you mentioned very well at the opening about development, because development was actually this linearity of if we go back to Rostow's theory of development, that there's stages that every society has to pass through development, and we have not accept that. It's not true. Every society,
That's their own.
yeah, there's a lot of things happening. But also when we talk about progress, what do we mean here? And I think the main question is, where do we want to go? What should that progress or progression takes us to? So maybe we should start here and try to think what kind of progress we, I don't know,
We are looking
envisions.
at in
Yeah,
Africa.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think this is a very nice starting point. I have a friend of mine who is also a scholar. He, of course, he studies development studies to master's level, and I think we had a discussion last time, and we're making a bit argument. So I said, I mean, you have to understand the definition of development. From which angle do you look development? Because I know that some people define development as not absence of growth or something, or from point A to point B. So I think if we agree that we all are a product of the same system, then we will be looking at, okay, we define development as what the white people or the Westerners see as development. Then in this way, we will see that, okay, Africans are not having very painted buildings everywhere, skyscrapers, plane, aeroplane. You know what we see as development, when somebody with uniformity in the society. Okay, the aesthetics level, does it conform with what we see here? So, but I think you made a very vital point, trying to put in a consciousness, like we have to start realizing, do we need to compare ourselves to the development we know, or do we need to ask ourselves, Africa, what is a way forward? Are we stepping from point A to point B? So I think this is in the position I will define progress as, like, somebody who is sick in Africa, having a good care system, somebody who has access to loan to start up a business, to fend for his family, because I see a lot of people in Africa, their wives gave birth, they don't even have money to fend for the family.
Yeah.
So we should look at this thing. Are we going to make a clarion call to our government to say, okay, provide some kind of institution to help people who are, I don't even want to use the word poverty, but who are less privileged, so they can have privilege? So this is what I think. Judy?
For me, from a social cultural perspective, as a social and cultural anthropologist in view, I have learned to question things, question narratives, question labels. So that's why we were so intentional about not using the word development versus underdevelopment. Who is underdeveloping what? What is development? From whose lens are we viewing development? But when we use progress, it's easier to say, oh, from point A to point, is my life progressing or is my life regressing? So we can easily personalize it and now make it relatable to every other thing around us. So the progression for me as an African would begin with me questioning, like, do I have access to basic things, basic needs, fundamental needs, or do I have to seek external help? It's not bad to seek help externally, right? But why do I have to, first of all, seek help externally before moving from point A to B? Can I not use the resources I have available around me? Say I want to cook a pot of soup, for example, as a woman, and I pick salt and Maggi or whatsoever, and I piece ingredients together to make a delicious pot of soup, and I would ensure that I have the ingredients that I need. Depends on the kind of soup I want to make, that I would be able to make it possible. Well, do I now have to start thinking, oh, I'll go and ask my neighbor for Maggi, or I would ask my neighbor for rice before I can actually feed myself as an individual? Like, it's not bad to ask for help if you're at that place where you don't, when you are, you don't have the opportunity or the privilege to help yourself. But is that sustainable? Is it sustainable that I cannot help myself? And this is where the state of things in Africa, where it's not even sustainable anymore for you to take care of your own self. How much more taking care of your own immediate family, not even extended family, because now we are beginning to wake up from that this need to save everybody. You want to send your uncle's children to school, you want to take care of the whole family when you haven't even finished taking care of your own self and your immediate needs. So for me, I don't have the answers, which is why we're having this conversation. It's a deep thing to think of, because I have heard people complain which is also, I have also been in that position of complaining. And then I realized that complaining is really not going to change anything. We have done that. So too much of that.
Action, of course.
We need to start taking actions, yes. And we cannot only depend on the government. As much as in the real sense of things, we have been made to believe that change only begins from the government first. Government has to make policies, they have to build, it has to come from it. It has been ingrained in our psyche that if the government does not make it happen, then it is never going to happen. But let us be realistic. Look at maybe me personally, I'm a creative, and I see our artists, our musicians, the way they are excelling in the international, the international arenas, and people are like, when I go to parties and people say, "Oh, this song," they know celebrities from Nigeria, and it makes me happy that I can have conversations that doesn't reflect what has been portrayed about Africa on the media. Because the only thing that has been portrayed on the media is how Africa is poor and how children are dying, people are suffering. That has been the media. But now I can have conversations about music. I can have conversation about our food, for example. I can talk about egusi soup. I can talk about... So those things have already started, changing the narratives for me as an African. And for me, that is progress. But there's still so much we can do. There's still so much more we can do. And that is the elephant in the room, which still boils down to the people in government.
I don't know. Can I jump in?
Yeah, you can.
Sorry, I have a little bit of cold. Okay, I think I want to take a different stand from you.
Okay.
And to me, I think probably this might explain the bigger picture of a lot of problems we have. I think so. We know Ubuntu. Yes, together can go faster. Alone I can go faster. Together we can go further. And I think at this point we are, as Africans, we are at that point of confusion because African societies are organized not on an individual basis, but on a society basis. So if we read Things Fall Apart, we go back to Chinua Achebe, and then the following book, The No Longer Teasing. We see how mafia was organized with moral and ethical guidelines that guided everybody. And then when you come later to No Longer Teasing, and I think those books, all three books, the African theology, explain very well the transition that we have been part of as Africans. And you can see even how I'm trying to coin my phrases. I'm using we, because that's how Africa's been. Like we Africans, we as a society, we as the people. But what I see the problem is, and this is where the confusion comes with the neoliberal, not only politics, but the neoliberalism that has intruding the all African society almost. I would say that.
Would you see it as a distortion?
It's a distortion. It's a confusion because now everybody's thinking of me instead of we.
Okay.
And that's why even we see the corrupt politicians, they get into power and everybody is looking on what can I get out of this instead of what can I do for the community to go further. And that's what you see. We somehow start, letting go those things that binded us as a community, as a group of people, because everyone is trying to scourge everybody for that individualism. So, and I'm not saying it's bad. It's good that individuals are becoming aggressive, but at what cost? And I think if we were advanced capitalists, and just let me say, I'm a socialist in the heart. So I don't believe in the capitalism. But if we were advanced capitalists, or in a capitalist system, as we are here in Germany or in the other Western countries, individualism is necessary. Because everybody's survival for the fittest, you know. But for us, we are still agrarian, most of our people. Most of our people are still peasants. And I'm sorry bringing some literature here. If you read James Scott on the moral economy, on how peasants in the countryside with a small patch of land and produce just enough to eat until the next season, and how they organize their economy, the peasant economy.
They're very satisfied about
They're very satisfied, and they don't want even to change. If you bring what do they call high yield seeds, they usually refuse. I remember, I'm from Tanzania. My mother used to have rice pads, and they brought these seeds from Vietnam, I think, or Thailand, which gave a lot of rice per whatever, per square, per hectare. They brought to farmers around our area, and people planted 1 year, and then when the harvest came, people harvested a lot, but they said the rice didn't taste good. So they refused. They went back to the traditional, and this is one of the things, because I'm delaying a little bit. Those
you're making a very nice point.
yeah, those seeds, because have been cultivated in those areas for many years, so they know how to tolerate weather changes, changes in soil composition. So when you bring new seeds, if things happen, people don't know how to adjust. But also, I just want to go back to the point. So the peasant economy is also organized. If this year, you know, so for example, if it's rainy, for example, in Tanzania this year, there's a lot of rain. So those who have farms down in the valleys, they are not going to get a lot of yield because it's a lot of rain than those who are a little bit upland. What happens is they share, you know, and as anthropologists, you know.
Boils down to we.
Yeah, we. So
Communality.
yeah,
which is
communality.
We've always been.
We've always been. So the confusion now comes when we, and this, I'm not saying it's bad about education. This comes about the education system. I don't know in many other countries, but I can tell about Tanzania, where you start so that you can advance as an individual. And I think there's really another nice book we should, I recommend people to read. Nobody, it's not that famous, by a Swedish professor. I wrote, he did his work in Tanzania and lived in Tanzania for years. It's called The Economy of Affection. So our economies, and that's why when you don't have salt, you go to the neighbor and knock, hey, do you have salt? Can I borrow a little bit? And they will never ask you to pay back, because we have this economy that is around affection. It has really bad implication also.
Like I was going to say that this is the way my grandparents lived, probably, but I don't know that kind of world anymore. I heard about it, you know. Because that was as a result of you know, before the colonialism, I heard stories about how our ancestors, even my grandparents or great grandparents, you know, you'd go to your neighbor and say, oh please, like this trade by bartering thing, how we were bartering, and if you don't have something, you go to the next person to give you. It's not even like the person will come and ask for the favor back and say, oh, I borrowed you something yesterday, I want it back. No, it's just this understanding of everybody cannot have everything, right? So we learned to depend on each other. And that way we survived, like we were able to uphold each other through pain. And I just did a field work, and then when I was asking people questions about, you know, certain things on how things were done before, how were we practicing wellness before in Africa compared to how it is now. And then a lot of things, like, I was like, a lot of things made sense to me, even though when you say them now, they'll say it's, oh, barbaric practice. It's, why would you do that? For example, if a woman were to die while she's pregnant with the baby in the belly, she is not allowed to be buried in the community because that's a bad omen. That's the way we believed it was before. Like, it's not normal. This is not a natural circumstance. So the priests would now, like, they'll do some rituals and make sure that she's buried in a different place from the rest of the community so that whatever happened to her will not befall the community members. These were the ways we practiced. These were our practices before. Like, if someone should steal or, crime was it wasn't at this high rate then because we were responsible for each other, because that once there is a thief amongst you, then there is a problem in the community. But this individuality, which has its own benefit as well, as a result of colonialism, it has now affected everyone, that everybody just wants to grab everything for themselves. As long as I'm well fed, as long as I'm okay, right? Then whatever, I don't care whatever happens to any other person. And this has affected our psyche, and now we are expecting changes to happen in places where we think these are little things, but they are not little. They actually play important roles in the way we shape our thought patterns and even our environment, because it's our thought patterns that will eventually change the environment.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Kiswesi, before you talk, something just came to my mind because I was looking at what our professor said here when he talked about the rice plantation, the people who are agrarian in nature. And I mean, it boils down to the definition of development. Because if you would see this kind of a person who is contented with the way he lives, he goes to farm, he has rice with the family, they eat, they are satisfied. If you start defining development as to fly a private jet, he will say you're talking nonsense, because it's about satisfaction, what works for you. So I just, when you said it came to my mind. I tried to bring it to the topic, the definition of development, how Africans see, and how are we going to say, okay, do we agree on this position, or should we think of a better way to see as moving from point A to point B? That is what just came. I just decided to reflect on it. Kiswesi, do you want to?
For me, I just wanted to expand also a little bit on what you said about, the economy of affection, because the way I perceive it is one of the uncountable riches of the African continent. This riches, the capacity of going to your neighbor and ask for, before you start your day, you greet them, how is your day going, and you do your things. Like it's a system that you don't find it in many parts of the world.
in the Western world.
African people are very, how do you call it, empathic by nature, even for us in the diaspora and in a foreign country. Like, there's something magical that happens each time that you walk in the street and you see a black brother or a black sister. Some says hello, some doesn't, but they cannot deny that there's a brother or a sister there.
I see you.
Yeah.
Say how far, like Nigerians.
Yeah.
How far?
Yeah. So
the head.
Just not the head, yeah.
They just knock like this. Hey, what's up? Hey.
yeah, even if even like some that ignore you, doesn't greet you or doesn't look your direction, like it's on purpose, and it's still like we have this electric connection, and for me it's a tool that we have to tap in. Like this energy that we have naturally of connecting with each other, like if we can direct that to a productive purpose, like we can move mountains. And this is it's a chemistry that is really deeply embedded in our DNA. Like you talk about the Ubuntu, and this is like some practices that existed like in ancient time, and it allowed African people to live in harmony within themselves, with nature, um, and you know, it was a way of life that was, it was working for us. And this is a, for me, it's a richness that we need to tap into, like a measure that can allow African societies to progress is if they really tap into that social aspect for productive outcomes.
But one would also say that, oh, some of these things that, like, they are archaic. They are primitive ways. We need to adjust to the tides, to the way things are going, because if you don't adjust to the tides, you just be like a tree without bearings, and any wind that just blows you, you just keep going
So
here and
uprooted
there.
tree.
Yeah, like
That's
because
interesting.
you are not adjusting to the tides, the way the world is moving, and
But my answer is this: if you see 5 people jumping from the fifth building, would you also jump? And it's considered as the norm. Would you also jump? So I think this kind of perception is
The
flawed.
difference is that you won't jump because you think you're going to die. Because, but the situation right now is that nobody even knows what is bad and what is good.
you
Because
think
we like a lot of, like I was saying something with, come to think about, we are talking about development or progress in Africa, in the leadership, sphere. I was telling before we started this podcast, I was trying to say that if you would be imagine as an African leader and you start your manifestation, your manifesto, as trying to talk about the good intentions you have for Africa, that you have make a step for failure. Because I said there is a conspiracy theory that says that even Nigeria, as my country, they struck a deal with their colonial powers that, okay, we give you independence, but we're still going to mine your economy for 99 years. Now, if this is possible, then this conclude the reason why we have puppets as our leaders. We are talking about progress, right? So if we are looking at progress as our savior will come from our leaders, then we should also make an effort to change some of all these narratives. African youth should rise up to make sure that we have philosopher kings as leaders who will usher in a very smooth trajectory for what progress. So this is what I want to say.
but do you want to say
No,
something?
yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I think first, we've been trying to pick up here and there on what the progress is and where do we want to go, and we're talking here between individual and the community and the society. And one thing is, I think we cannot go back to Ubuntu anymore. So that phase is gone. We can, tap things. We still do that. We still like we meet here and then we say hello. We still have that, but when it comes to as a economic model, we cannot do it anymore. We're in a global world. We're in a globalized world, and we have, and now it's even faster with the social media. Like here, people would just get all the ideas. So I don't know if we can go there, but I think when we talk about progress now, I'm going back and trying to think. I think we have been always progressing. Okay, so we are progressing all the time as Africa, and when it comes to development, we have been always developed. And if you speak about modernity, we have been always been modern. So the question is, when we talk about progress, what should be the bigger picture here? To me, I think the most important will be, the important aspects of life that people, as you mentioned, there should be access and affordable health
To basic,
care.
just basic needs.
Yeah. There should be access to food and shelter and all that. I think, and if we still have people who don't have this access, then that's what progress. Making a mistake.
We're lacking a progress.
We are lacking a progress. So if we have a community, or we have a village of 3,000 or 5,000 people somewhere in North Nigeria, and then there is no school, there is no healthcare, there is no safe water, then we can question. We can say, are we progressing? But if we have these basic things and also access to land, and this is very important. And I will come back to this, because now we see the encroachment and land dispossession which is going on in Africa in the name of green
energy,
sustainability, organic, because Africa is a huge.
Always been organic.
We've always been organic.
We didn't need anybody to teach us organic.
So these are the things.
I mean, I want to say something before you continue.
Yeah.
Because I'm always like steering up, because as you say, we are picking from here and there, trying to garnish our podcast or to say something that comes directly from the way we think. Yeah. I listened to one argument on the internet, right? They were saying that Africans, we buy things outright, but here in the Western world, people buy on credit. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to make this kind of juxtaposition, trying to make this kind of comparison: who is developed, who has progress, who is more progressive. I think
who has more money.
Because if we are using money as a yardstick for measuring, if an African person goes to buy something outrightly and pay, okay, some people will say, oh, he has money.
Right.
Somebody from the Western world goes there and buys something on credit and pay bit by bit. You will say he doesn't have money. But then somebody made a comment and say, for the fact that a Western person has an access for credit, it means that he is developed. Because he has an access to this kind of, call it facility, or something.
No, I think I was going to this point. I think it's interesting. So if you talk about money and consumption and purchasing, I think it doesn't give a good picture. Mm-hmm. I think the most important aspect of the economy, of personal economy in the capitalist system, is property. Property ownership. Mm-hmm. If you go to Nigeria, if you go to Burkina Faso, if you go to Tanzania, when you see a family in a house, that house belongs to them. It will take 10, 15 years to build a house, and once they finish the house, there's no credit on them. The house is theirs. All these houses you see here, people own houses. They take mortgage for 30 to 40 years. Even more. So,
does it even belong to you eventually?
No. And they even buy apartments. They don't even build outright house as the way we build in Africa. Yeah. But I don't have any answer to this. Just like
no. So I'm coming there. Mm-hmm. We remember in 2008 when the economic crisis, the housing crisis in the US, how many Americans lost their house? 4 million Americans lost their house, and some of them even became homeless. So this is just a pic. If you see an African driving a car in Africa, they bought it cash. Mm-hmm. If you see an African, we can exclude South Africa and Northern Africa a little bit because they have these schemes. Mm-hmm. If you see a Tanzanian having an iPhone, they bought it cash. Mm-hmm. My phone, I had to pay for 2 years.
I bought a phone here and I was paying cash. And the guy was surprised.
Like why?
I went to buy a phone and I was paying money cash. Yeah. The guy was surprised. But it's a kind of a culture. We buy things cash. But I don't know if...
So if we use this thing, this universal way of measuring progress, which I feel this is the mistake we have been making.
Of course. But we are steering...
As a result of colonialism, right? Because in all reality... Although some people would say we are still talking of past glory. Like there's this pigeon thing. I get them before, no be property. Which translates to if you say something once belongs to you, that it's no longer yours, so it's not property. So when we talk about civilization, modernity, progress, or development in Africa, we always were organic. This organic thing that we are talking about now, like in Germany, we hear bio. In America, people now want to go to organic. They say non-GMO. We never had any reason to think about all of these things in Africa. We ate directly from the land, from the earth. We did not use fertilizers. It was when colonialism came, all in the name of civilization, industrialism, or whatsoever, industrialization, that they started teaching us how to use fertilizers that don't even work well with our soil, which is where we started regressing. Because it wasn't, this whole idea of progression or development was not based on a social-cultural perspective. It was just for
Self-interest.
so capitalism for survival, like, some set of people wanted to accumulation of wealth, right? So now it has halted us in our steps as Africans, because we don't even know where we begin and where other people begin anymore, or where other people end. We are now doing copy and paste. Let me use Lagos as an example. I grew up in Lagos, and growing up in Lagos, all the houses, you would see them modeled after Victorian houses in England, or buildings modeled after American houses and all of that.
Architecture.
Exactly, American architecture. And we use this thing to set the standard for ourselves, and we are not like looking at our environment. Is this thing sustainable? Is our weather?
Is it what we need?
Is this? Let me even use bridge. I noticed, I observed something. That was even one of the reasons I decided to study anthropology. Bridge, when they are saying they are developing bridge in Lagos, the government just comes, whatever bridge, not only third mainland, like a pedestrian bridge, overflying bridge. It's a good development, right? You will flyovers, because so that people will not cross the express and have accidents. It's good. But I noticed that every time they build flyovers, pedestrians don't use them.
They still maintain.
They still decide to use the flyovers. And I asked why. And you know what I observed is that when the government is building flyovers, they don't bother to do surveys and ask around where is the best place for us to construct this flyover that is convenient for the like people in this community.
Where they want to.
Where they pass the most, where is easier, the easiest place for them. The government just comes, builds flyovers, and then they say, we've given you people flyovers, oh, if you like, don't use it. If you don't use it, we'll fine you. And then you now see that people don't use those flyovers because maybe where the flyovers are is farther away from the easily accessible place to them to get public transportation. Mm-hmm. So we are modeling our development. Okay, I'm building bridges now. And then you put it as part of the things that you've achieved as a governor. I built bridges, I built one thing, and you realize that the people are not maintaining it. They are not using it. Why are they not using it? Because you did not consider them when you were building these things. So they will not maintain it. They would rather destroy it because you did not ask them. And then one would say, why should...
It's just like trying to put sugar in a tea for someone who doesn't like the taste of a sugar.
Right.
But because you have heard that sugar is always tasty, you want to give it to the person.
Right.
Okay.
And you don't know that this sugar is not good. Maybe everybody has their sugar levels, right? Some people, maybe just a little sugar, they have diabetes.
Even some people even hate the taste. Some people detest the taste of sugar. Don't you know that?
Exactly.
Damn,
And it doesn't even work with your system, maybe because in your family you have the tendency of being diabetic, but because you heard sugar is good for this thing, if you increase your sugar level, and then you just start taking sugar, and you realize that the person that takes sugar on a regular is not diabetic, but you start developing diabetes.
Okay.
So basically, you're not tuning in the frequency of your environment, the frequency of the people, and you're not in tune with the needs of the urgent needs that needs to be solved.
Exactly.
So you're copying, you're borrowing.
Just doing copy and paste from what you see that is working for other people.
But to do that, like for example, initiative need to focus on collecting datas. Collecting data from the people, collecting their, their...
Making consensus or like trying to find out what they need.
Exactly. So you can make a more pragmatic change that will benefit the population. Yeah, it's all about data. And I think for example, if I look at my country, like data-wise, we're not... that advanced, unfortunately. For example, I had a friend of mine, she's doing something like a presentation on I think climate change, and like she searched for like books that talks about that, and she barely found some. So it's that's problematic.
I have two comments on this really wonderful discussion. I hope I'll remember. Two, three.
Make it 10.
I'm tired.
First, I want to comment on you mentioned this Victorian
Modeling of
modern, what is considered modern, and of course, as you say, society progress, and one of the reasons why community or society, change the way they organize their life. One of some of the factors or reasons should be the contact with the other societies. So people can build all this Victorian, and I can be considered modern, even though we have been always modern. But I think you should, and I'll touch this. It's a course that I've been teaching, anthropology of development here, which addresses some of these issues. One of them you should read is a very wonderful. I think it's a book by James Ferguson. It's called what is called the book? Oh, sorry, it just slipped out. Something with modernity, and he was looking exactly at that in Lesotho, where on construction, a modern house will be a brick house, like cement house, with this iron, the iron sheets. I don't know, is it white? The one which are super shiny.
Okay.
Yeah,
Aluminium,
yeah.
the aluminium sheet. And he lived with his with his family, but also they kept the old house. You remember the mud house, which
Clay.
clay, with the cow shit on top, and it was like dug a little bit. So if you go in the house, you have to go like
Bend
under,
down.
and he was trying to. It's really interesting that because of this how we see modernity, and this actually emulate today with how we build in cities. So you go to cities like Dar es Salaam, they have this flash glass tall building, and what he was saying, actually, because Lesotho is semi-desert, it's super hot. So if you go in this new cement, these materials are actually, they use it here, and because here it's very cold.
Yes.
Exactly. Before you say, when I went to do my when I went for NYSC, but like that's what we do in Nigeria. After you graduate, you want to serve your country. When I went for NYSC, I was in the north. I saw that during the time Homer Jeep was raining in Nigeria. We saw a very thatched house, like what you mentioned, with mud.
Yeah.
And somebody parked Homer Jeep. People who use Homer Jeep are considered to be rich.
Yeah.
And they even have DSTV, satellite, like receiving network. So we were like asking, how come these people have just thatched house with a very fine car and internet?
Dish.
So, but we somebody told us that
It's like
they cannot. It's like air conditioner. They cannot use this thing because here is very hot.
Yeah, exactly.
But they need to be in a place that is cold. It's just like seeing a banker in Nigeria during when the sun is shining like so hot, but you have to wear suit and tie
look like the
because you
Western.
want to copy like somebody. You don't want to use what works for you.
And that's
I
the-
wouldn't blame that banker, because this is the way it's a conditioning.
Yeah.
When the West came into Africa, there was no equal exchange. I think we've talked about this in one of our podcasts. They came and taught us their own ways, and then they took our ways, but they did not acknowledge us as human beings. So we saw them as saviors, that they came to save us, they came to show us the light. And then when you talk, they'll say, "Oh, without like," I still hear people have conversations saying, they wish colonialism did not end, because they still believe that colonialism did us a whole lot of good. It gave us a whole lot of benefits. But then I realized that, okay, look at us. We are in Europe, and then they say there is no bad clothing. there is no bad weather, rather. In Germany, it's just bad clothing. Because you cannot be in winter and be wearing camisole and singlets and all of that. You have to be properly, no matter the number of clothes you wear, just as long as you are warm,
have more layers.
Wear whatever is comfortable for you. Don't say, how am I going to be? How will people perceive me? Do I look like I'm wearing too much? Wear what works for you. But in Africa, it's so humid. But we have been taught to wear too many clothes. And that was as a result of the sexualization of girls especially. Because remember that our grandmothers, they used to tie wrappers most of the time, right? And our grandfathers used to tie wrappers on their waists.
No, there's exposition everywhere.
Because there was heat and nobody was sexualizing anybody. Yeah. There was morals. It wasn't the morality was not. Yes, everybody had boundaries and respected privacies, and even though we were living as in a community, we still respected each other's boundaries. That you could tell who got someone pregnant. You would know who is moving with who.
And there are laws.
And they were exactly. Exactly. But now we cannot even begin to imagine that someone. It's the sexualization of things amongst the youth especially. It's saddening. I see, when you see someone wear a certain clothes and then you be like, go and cover up. In Africa, so I have to cover up to appeal to your own sexuality so that you don't sexualize me.
But the question is, did Africa copy this way of dress code from somewhere?
Of course it was copied.
That came as we keep on moving forward or something?
I don't believe that it came as a way of moving forward. Because let's be realistic. When you are hot in Germany here, you see the way people dress. They go stay outside in the sun. They do sunbathing because they know that this is only just for a while. It's for a short time. Very soon, the sun will be over. Winter is going to come. We'll start covering ourselves up. But can you even imagine an African going to stay out in the sun, doing sunbathing? And you want to, let's talk about progress and development. You want to copy everything that someone else is doing. How about you copy that? Like Keith Swansida said, if you see people jumping out of a building and they are dying, will you do the same thing that they are doing?
No, I think, I quite agree. But what did I want to say? On the dressing, So if you look today, the Zulu are still wearing their traditional. Anyone have seen the Zulu girls? The tradition, and I think is one. I would say few wearing what was used to. It's not like they're wearing every day in special ceremonies, and no one is sexualizing. I'm not saying no one. I've never been to those things, but if we talk about clothes, actually, the way we wear today, most of us, it either came with Islam or it came with Christianity, a tie and whatever. And both religions, Islam and Christianity, and they're all good. I don't want to stir up this conversation, but both religions are actually hyper masculine ideology in nature. They want to control women's bodies. All of them, they control women's bodies, and also control weaker men bodies. So it's not all about women. It's women, but also weaker men.
Weaker men.
Wow. No, we don't want to go there. We are discussing it.
We're going to talk about that later.
No.
Not today.
Yeah, we can talk another.
Please, can you tell us more about the weaker men?
No. What I mean here.